Thank you so much for agreeing to do this. So, I want to
Okay.
begin by asking you, why do you think we as humans need touch, and how does it change over the years, like from a child to as we grow into an adult? How does that change primarily?
Well, so you must be knowing this about me. I teach a subject known as transactional analysis. So in that, we have an entire chapter known as strokes, which is just another word for touch, which is like a stroke, like when you stroke a cat or a dog, or you stroke a human being behind the neck or anywhere else. So we believe in the world of transactional analysis that the human touch is the first emotional and physical experience that a human being undergoes at the start of their life. A baby who's just fresh out of his mother's womb, in the hospital, all wrapped up, what's the first thing he experiences? He gets hung upside down, wrapped on his butt, and then eventually everyone's cuddling him, holding him, touching him, holding his neck. And then that only gets further and further ingrained as the form of emotional respite. So there's this association with the idea that every time I'm touched, something good happens. Every time I'm touched, I'm provided for. Every time I'm touched, it feels great. It feels comfortable. It feels warm. It feels welcoming. It feels forthcoming, and almost feels like an initiation into humanity or into the family. The touch is a way of saying, hey, you know what? You're welcome, and join the club. All right, we're here to take care of you and look at things together. So it's one of the most primal experiences of, I think, just being a human being, really, or even being an animal. Even if you see in certain animals, the mother will lick the cub behind the ears and groom them. Even in monkeys, you see sometimes they're picking stuff from each other's hair. So the idea of touch is to, in my opinion, to convey not just camaraderie or companionship, but also to convey this feeling that, hey, I see you, you're okay, I'm here for you, we'll take care of things, we're looking at it. So it's a way of conveying a certain comfort and a mutual understanding of what that comfort entails, both for you as a human being and as a member of a larger club, society, association, culture, family, etc. So as we grow up, I mean, based on certain cultural rules, the idea of a touch will evolve as well. For example, young girls are told, don't let any man, stray man, touch you, right? Or it's okay to touch boys but not okay to touch girls. A young man may be told, don't, you cannot hit your sister because she's a girl and girls must not be hit. Or if a girl keeps going and hugging a certain male figure, the mother will say, no, no, it's not right, you're a girl, you're not supposed to be so open. So these are all based on cultural values, cultural indices. For example, it's extremely rude in Southeast Asian cultures like in Japan or Korea to touch somebody unless a friendship has first been assumed, or a friendship has kind of grown. So you can't just, in India, two guys will see each other, hey, kaisa hai, kidhar hai, bahut time ho gaya. You can't do. In Japanese culture, they put their hands together and they bow down to you, whether you're at a restaurant or whether you're meeting friends. A hug, or a pat on the back, or a little some people, they'll shake your hand and give you a little bit of a pat, to say, hey, I see you, this is great, lovely to meet you. I remember I used to have this friend's father who used to always shake hands with two hands, and I used to always wonder, why are you putting two hands ahead? I asked him once, I said, uncle, why are you doing this? He said, no, when you do with two hands, it's to convey respect. I'm like, "Bhai, aisa bhi hota hai." I never knew. So you see, all these things are based on your personal taste, culture. Some people don't like being touched also. Like some people are a bit like, so we have all these arbitrary rules that either we are taught or that we inculcate based on our observation of our families, on what touch is, deemed appropriate or not. For example, if a mother is not a very warm and touchy feely mother, and every time the child goes and says, mama, 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 and she says, Kya, constantly coming and chip going to your mama. Big boy now, no? Stop hugging mama so much. Go play downstairs. Or, if the son keeps going to the father, he's like, stop hugging, you're a girl or what? Always wanting to cuddle and hug. Be a man, come on. Be a tough boy, come on. What do you want to hug all the time? So these rules then become a part of our personalities based on what we're hearing and seeing and observing. Sometimes even how the parents are with each other. Do they hold hands? Does the father just come and give the mother a kiss on the cheek and say, I love you? So these rules get made up. Some people are not okay with physical displays of affection. Some people are constantly wanting to kiss and hold their partners. Every 2 seconds they want to kiss. Like in that cartoon, The Addams Family, which I used to see when I was growing up. He just keeps kissing his wife's hand and embarrassing the hell out of her. So he's just so full of it, you know. So it really depends, like my mom is Punjabi. So in Punjabi culture, hugging, kissing in between men is very normal. When my dad's side is the Maharashtrian side, it's considered, are you touching? Is elder to you? Who makes these rules up? I mean, you really can't go back to the beginning because you don't know. It wasn't just one person. Maybe it was 2, 3 people, and then these things get so rehearsed, and they kind of go on autopilot mode. And then people don't even know why they started doing these things anymore. They're like, we have no idea why we started doing these things. Like for me, I'm a hugger. And my mom used to hug me and kiss me. I remember once I hugged my mom in front of one of my aunts, and she was like, "Kai kartes? Khub jal, khub jal." Like, enough. This is enough. I'm like, I'm hugging my own mother. Like, what's with you? Maybe because she grew up in a certain conservative society where it was not okay for a man and woman, even if they're mother and son, to hug publicly. So touch is has a lot to do with the cultures, has a lot to do with the personalities that you were observing while you were growing up. But my innate belief is it feels great. It's a lovely thing. Why do people who have trouble with intimacy with other human beings want to keep pets? Because that outlet, whatever you call it, the maternal, paternal instinct, or that need to take care of something, is there in all human beings. It's almost part of our genetic design to look after each other, to take each other into accord, to take each other into consideration. It's such an important and beautiful part of the human experience, really. Not just human experience. I think even if you see, I have this plant that I got recently. It's someone very special gave me as a gift, and I see the creeper. It just kind of wraps its way around the little support that's been given. So even the plant has a need to sort of cuddle its way to growth. So why have we as human beings created all these rules and arbitrary rules, if I may add, to prevent this sharing of warmth, to prevent the sharing of camaraderie and just love? It's because there's not so in TA, right? Transactional analysis, we believe that these rules are created by adults so they can better control their children. So if I starve you of affection vis-a-vis touch, you'll behave, or you'll listen to me, or you'll finish your food, or you'll do your homework, or you won't get into a fight with the kids in the building, or you won't get into trouble at school, or you'll be more punctual if mom refuses to hug you, if you're scared of a parent. Sometimes these rules get propagated, like don't accept compliments. Otherwise, they said don't climb up a tree. Chane ke jhaad pe mat chad jao. Only donkeys praise their own trail. See, where does it begin and end? A touch is a physical touch, yes, but you can also touch someone with your words. You can also touch someone with your deeds. So technically, the definition of touch is extremely confusing. It can be very broad also. If you're talking about the physical touch, all right. But in psychology, we believe the physical touch sometimes may not be culturally appropriate, but you can touch someone with your deeds, with a few warm words, a few kind words. You say, hey, like what's that movie, Sanjay Dutt, Munna Bhai, where he says, Maqsood Bhai, tum bahut mast kaam karta hai, and then he just goes and hugs that janitor and he's like, what the hell is happening? Because people aren't used to that. They'll suspect foul play, jadoo ki jappi, whatever. It's a bit dramatic, a bit saccharine, no doubt, dipped in sugar. You can't just go and start giving hugs in the middle of the street during COVID. I get it. But you can do the next best thing, which is, speak with a little bit of kindness. You don't have to go all out. You are the best thing that's happened to mankind. Don't go crazy. So for me, that also encompasses the idea of touch. All right. So these are a few stray thoughts.
So, what do you think happens in a case where people are starved for touch or they experience what we call skin hunger? Like, what is your understanding of a
Right.
condition like that, and why do you think it happens to people?
It happens to people because maybe the life that they lead is one of isolation. Maybe they don't live with other people, or even the people they live with are not particularly affectionate. And it's a very technical, transactional, almost militaristic or business-like environment in the family. It's not unheard of. It's not unheard of. Um, Skin hunger, we also call it as contact hunger in TA, that need to feel something, So, like that's why, a kid will always have his or her favorite stuffed toy or favorite blanket. Listen, I'm a 35-year-old man now, 35 in a few days, okay, my birthday. And I have this blanket I can't sleep without because I wrap it around my pillow because it makes my pillow like 3 times softer because it just gives me this really ridiculous, comforting feeling. And every time that blanket goes for a wash, it's gone for a wash today, I start feeling like a part of my bed is incomplete. I'm like, oh no, how am I going to sleep now? Of course, I'll fall asleep eventually, but that's because I also love that warmth, that soft feeling. Uh, it's a beautiful thing. It's a very human thing, isn't it? I mean, think about it. It's the first thing you experience when you're born. Everyone carries you, and when you're on your deathbed, assuming someone is there to hold your hand, even if there's no family, at least that nurse will be there, to let you go. So that's the last thing you experience before you die as well. So the experience of touch, life begins with it, your life ends with it. And yes, it is very much a thing what you have said. The skin hunger is there in Japan. I don't know if you've heard, it's there on YouTube as well. They have these places known as the cuddle cafes of Japan, where you can go pay a half hourly charge and just lie down in the lap of a woman and she'll stroke your head, or nothing, no sexual services, etc. She'll get you a little glass of juice or a little packet of chips, listen to you talk about your troubles while she strokes your head, and she'll just put her hand on your chest and put her head on your chest, and then the guys come out feeling like, "Arey baap re, kuch to theek ho gaya abhi, sukoon mila." Of course, in India, something like that would never take off because we're still very conservative. We're still debating about the length of women's skirts and shorts, which is something the US stopped debating in the 50s. So we're still a bit slow on the uptake. It's fine. It's what it is, without passing judgment. And it's a weird year as it is. But yes, that need for warmth and touch is legitimate. In fact, it doesn't make anyone better or worse or weaker or more vulnerable or clingy. It's just who you are. If you have a need, it's like this. Some people will have 3 rotis and say, "Wow, my stomach is full." Some person will have like half a roti and say, "My God, this was a huge roti. I can't even finish the whole thing." What's right or wrong in that? It's just everyone has a different appetite towards food. Everyone has a different appetite towards touch and warmth. Some people are a little more touchy, feely, huggy, kissy, or whatever you want to call it. So, especially in relationships, it's very important to convey this to your partner. And if you if you have a partner or spouse who shares the same appetite for physical affection, then you're going to be in a very happy relationship. So it's very important to ascertain these things at the outset. It doesn't make you someone weak if you say I have a need to be touched or held or hugged. Even if you're a man, of course, you might want to slip that into a discussion in a slightly different way. But say, I really like it when we hold hands or when we're together physically, whatever. So sometimes I have to teach this to my male clients as well. So ask her for what you need and see if she's able to give it to you. If she condemns you for having needs, then that's not a very healthy relationship now, is it? Because you can't condemn someone for having a need. How can you? It's like us telling someone, hey, I need a glass of water, and they say, "Arey yaar, tu to pani pita hi rehta hai. Kitna piyega? You're going to drink the whole river Nile or what? You're mad or what? Arabian Ocean has less water. She has less water because of you. You can't be that way. You can't be that way because then you're passing a value judgment on someone's needs. A need is a need, be it a physical one, a psychological one, a social need. So that has to be understood and respected for the relationship to survive. You understand?
Yeah. So, the thing that you brought up about the cuddle cafes, US has the entire system of professional cuddlers, and
Mhm.
I am one of the few people. I might be one of the initial 1 or 2 people from India who is trained as well. So, if the pandemic sort of improves, I will be trying to start something on those lines in India where people who are in need of such a service can avail one against a fee. It's a form of touch as therapy. So it's called professional cuddling, and there are people who are trained to understand, consent and boundaries and all things like that. Again, like you mentioned, it's an extremely non-sexual, so it's platonic, it's non-romantic, it's non-sexual, and the intention is to just be able to give the other person the chance to explore their body and their need, like you mentioned. So
That's
hoping
right.
for something like that to work off. So, what do you think differentiates a touch from being platonic versus being sexual? Is it just the intention, or is there something else also that could make that demarcation?
intention and execution. You know what I mean? I mean, of course, certain parts of the body are associated with, the sexual act. You want to giving someone a hug, suddenly you reach down and grab their butt or do something, extremely, strange, that can be extremely offensive, and you can get into a lot of trouble for that, of course, between the opposite genders, etc., even with the same genders. So yeah, there are certain boundaries that must never be crossed. Propriety has to be taken into consideration. Goes without saying, and this is stuff that parents need to teach their children. That it's not okay for you to touch someone, that these parts of the body are extremely private. Because a lot of times we also hear this in therapy, where the wife says that he never hugs me, and whenever he hugs me, in bed, he's very rough with me, or it feels like he's just wants to just have sex, and then he'll just go off to sleep just like that. There's no cuddling, there's no banter, there's no fun, there's no warmth, there's no build up, there's no foreplay. So it's like this. It's like an utility belt. Okay, if you're a handyman and you've come to repair something, you need different types of screwdrivers. You need a certain type of hammer. You need to use all these tools based on the situation. So touch is also like your utility belt. So there's a regular touch. There's like a casual touch. Kidhar hai bhai? What's happening? There's a slightly more warm touch. Hey man, I know it's been a shit year for you. And I appreciate all that you've tried to do. For us as a team, in this organization. And then there's a slightly more sexual touch, hold someone by the waist and say, come here, let's kiss or whatever, So, of course, there are different types of touches, and it's important to understand that depending on the place, time, and the relationship you share, and the boundaries that have already been set, that touch needs to be looked into as to whether it's creating an awkwardness or whether it's creating an affable vibe. What is it doing for the relationship? So intent, of course, and execution. All right. So another very important thing is for all the guys who are watching this, if they're watching this, that is, a woman is not your property. Okay, just because you're married to her, like she owes me the right to touch her. No, she has to be comfortable, and you got to warm her up to that. I think in this country we really have dropped the ball on how to take care of our girls. All right, so don't be rough with a woman, all right, for the men, because I hear this so often. A lot of times it's the other way around also. The wife says, I'm a woman, so I can like hit my husband. There was some video that had gone viral where she climbed on a car and hit a guy, and all the women are celebrating it, saying, yes, yes, he deserves it. I'm like, wait a minute, do you know the guy? Do you know the guy? Do you know if he deserves it or no? What if his wife has a rage problem? What if she was cheating on him first, and then he went and met some female friend of his, and then she said, how could you do this to me? And there was nothing. So we can't jump to conclusions based on a person's gender, based on a certain person's appetite for physical warmth. So everyone has their needs, and certain boundaries, yes, they need to be kept, and certain considerations need to be made.
So there's this general tendency, even when I was discussing it with psychologists and practitioners from America, that as a society, we are inclining towards sexualizing most of touch. Like, we either talk about touch with infants, with babies, because it's a dire need. It really affects, it's a matter of life and death for them if they are
Oh, yeah.
starved early. But as in how you grow up into an adult, you sort of experience touch most often of sexual nature, or typically not a lot. So, like, do you think, in your opinion, we are indeed sort of sexualizing touch as adults to a point where it's not needed so much?
No, who are you and I to decide what's needed and not needed in society? In my opinion, people can decide for themselves what they need and what they don't need. I think I don't think it's fair to make a broad statement like that, that we are, as a society, sexualizing touch. Yeah, what happens is a lot of the touch that adults, end up engaging in ends up being of the sexual kind. That's like the only time someone will touch you is when you're, getting some action, so to speak. So that's why the sexual touch is the context in which touch is experienced by a lot of adults. But it doesn't mean you can't hug a friend. I mean, I've seen like girls tend to, be a little more like, I've seen all the girls on Instagram, they're hugging each other from behind and kissing each other. Like, you'll never see guys do that. So because the guys are like, it's not the macho thing to do, they hug us, hey, kaisa hai? One pat on the back, pop up, and that's it. Girls are a lot more, I mean, also because they're not culturally burdened to hide their feelings the way men are. Like, you're a sissy if you cry, or a sissy if you talk about your emotions, etc. Which is why, someone asked me last week that, Dr. Aman, why you have so many female students? Like why then, where the guys at? I said, because for a lot of men, talking about their feelings or helping people talk about their feelings is not considered a very conventional career choice, right? It's as if men don't have feelings, only the women have feelings. So there's a plethora of female counselors. So sometimes what happens is their male clients start feeling a bit awkward around them. They're like, we can't swear around a woman, etc. So you see, these things are very multifaceted. It's very important to understand one very important thing, and that is that everyone has a need, and everyone will find a way to have that need addressed one way or the other, whether it's culturally appropriate, inappropriate. And touch is one of the most primal needs that a human being can have. But unfortunately, because of all those years of conditioning, don't touch people, don't accept it from people when they're touching you, etc. So many rules. Some people, even in cases of sexual abuse, where victim shaming happens, where a woman blames herself because she was touched by some creepy uncle of hers when she was, an adolescent girl. And then she says, no, but I allowed it. How could I? And then she never is able to, let people near her physically touch her. She has issues with men moving forward. So you see, we have to investigate an individual's value system and what that value system basically means for them in terms of helping them navigate their relationships with other people, vis-a-vis how much touch is allowed, how much touch is not allowed, how much touch is appropriate, how much is bordering on creepy and unwelcoming. So that has to be understood, because we cannot make broad rules that, oh, nowadays society is sexualizing touch. Says who? Okay, all right. So that's what I believe.
Do you think people seek sex only for, like, purely for sexual reasons, or is it also for reasons to feel intimacy, to feel connection, to feel touch?
Absolutely. Very much so, very much so. And we cannot get into any broad stereotypes that women want to seek intimacy in sex and men just want to seek a carnal outlet, to sort of just get their bodies serviced, so to speak. It's a crass way of putting it, but uh, it could be the other way around as well. A woman just wants to have sex and then get up and say, all right, thanks, see you next week. And and the guy wants to cuddle and hold her. After that he says, no, but my feelings are, my feelings are now growing for her, and I feel like we should have spent the night together. So it really depends on, not on gender, but more on your own appetite, as we call it, contact hunger, which is very legitimate hunger. It has to be addressed one way or the other, in a way that's not illegal or creepy or impinging on someone's privacy, or that's not, you're not sort of breaking some kind of law, so to speak, as what I said. Yeah.
What kind of issues do people usually, generally in an Indian context, face? It could be people who are married and in a relationship, but even generally, if you see people that are touch related, both sexual or non-sexual in nature, that could be critical to understanding how we as Indians are dealing with a problem like this. Because whatever discourse is available, it's not a lot from the Indian context. So I'm just trying to understand that.
In certain communities, it's not okay for a man and woman to embrace each other in public. We also know about how couples are picketed during Valentine's Day just because they were in a park or at, the Bandra, corners of Bandra holding hands, etc. We know what that happens if people say, "Ye kya kar rahe ho?" It happened once to my mom and dad. They were just holding hands in a park, and they're a married couple, and they're like not very young. Okay, I mean, if I'm going to be 35, parents are not exactly young. Okay, this is not too long ago that some guard came and said, "Yahan pe sab allowed nahi." They're just holding hands, and walking in the park. That's it. Nothing else. Happened to my own parents. So a lot of this moral policing, I think, in the Indian context, I think we're very confused about what our Indianness entails. I keep telling people, this whole. I was seeing this video just the other day on YouTube, very interesting, that it's because of the Victorian era old school English values that were so such a strong force of influence on Indian culture during the British Raj, that this whole idea of the woman covered in a sari became popular. Because if you go back to our ancient history, you see our Khajuraho temples, women aren't exactly completely covered with ghungats, etc. I think that also became a situational requirement because of the sheer number of wars that were being fought back then between the princely states and the British Raj. That let's cover our women so that they're not so it's not, it doesn't act as a lure or a bait to these invading forces, especially because before the British, the Mughals were here, etc. So a lot of these rules of keep our women covered and indoors came from that requirement, more of a militaristic requirement, that if we don't keep our women covered, the enemy realizes, oh, they have women and children, we can bring them to their knees much easier. Just kidnap a couple of key women from the royal family and they'll come with their pagdi in their hand. So a lot of these rules have to be revisited. So the idea of what it means to be modern, to be physically affectionate, has to evolve as well, really. When I was visiting Paris a couple of years ago, it was a very normal sight to see couples just kissing each other on the lips. What will happen if that happens here? People will start staring on the street like that. They get excited. Why? Because it's not something you usually see, right? Which is why certain things in India, as I said, we're a bit slow on the uptake. We haven't yet kept up with the world in certain areas. In small countries, tiny countries, the entire country is half the size of Kerala, and they're far more evolved in the way they look at women, fashion, etc. So, and also because safety is such a concern here, it's always, it's a double-edged sword, to sort of tell women to, oh, it's okay, be more physically affectionate. No, because sometimes a man may sexualize what is a very innocuous, a very innocent, friendly hug. This has happened in college all the time. I was in St. Xavier's, like some girl will hug a guy because, she's his friend, and then he starts falling in love with her. And then she says, but I only see you as a friend. So as I said, these things are constant, these are moving pieces. You have to always understand that your need for being touched need not be shared by another person. So you got to take stock of it. Get yourself a bear or whatever, or get yourself a pet, or indulge in some kind of contact sport or whatever it is that you need to do. Uh, you know, surround yourself with lots of pillows. I know it sounds a bit almost a bit lame, like, oh shit, that's not the real thing, but it's a legitimate need. Yeah, I mean, प्यास आप thumbs up से बुझाओ या पानी से बुझाओ. It's your choice, really. I mean, I'd recommend water, but not everyone may have access to water. You go abroad, water is more expensive than a Coca-Cola. Some people say, I can't afford mineral water in Switzerland, like I can afford a Diet Pepsi. So you see, your need for being touched will have to be understood by you first. So don't censor that to yourself first. Appreciate it, understand it, and normalize it in your head first. Then figure out how you want to go and get it, isn't it?
So, with couples that you usually see, do you see them communicating with each other about not just what they like, but what they expect from the other person when it comes to meeting needs of touch?
Well, two problems happen. Couples start expecting each other to become mind readers. So they either don't communicate. The wife will say, "But he's supposed to know this. He's my husband," and or he'll get angry and say, "This much is common sense. How could she not know something like this? This is common sense that I can't keep hugging and holding her all the time." Firstly, these are very obnoxious terms, that he's supposed to know this, and this is common sense. These are some of the most ugly terms in the English language, in my opinion, because they mean absolutely nothing. There's no such thing as common sense, because the entire world is governed by the subjective views of it. Every human being has a subjective rendition of the world, okay, which ties back to the way they grew up, their personality, their values, and what they want for themselves, from themselves. Okay, so there's no such thing as common sense. So what is the question again? Bring me back. I tend to meander sometimes. Go ahead, bring me back.
So do you think people are communicating enough about what they want for themselves
Yes.
and what they
So
expect?
correct. So what they are doing is either they are not communicating, or they are communicating it in a very obnoxious manner, through sarcasm, through meanness. They'll taunt the husband in front of his friends. Yeah, he's one lazy guy only. or the wife will joke about, have one girl's WhatsApp group and share photos of her. Just a real case I had, and she's making memes of her husband and sharing it, and then he found out that they're all these women in her kitty are like laughing about him, how he's fat and how he snores, and so instead of, so I always believe, aapko dindora kyun peetna hai? Why do you want to wash your dirty laundry in public? Why do you want to make an Insta story every time you're upset with someone in your house, and post a quote about it? See, talk to the person in question now. Why do you want to talk on WhatsApp group chat? Why do you want to talk on your building WhatsApp group? Just call up and say, masla kya hai? Issue kya hai? Problem kya hai? Takleef kya hai? As Modi says in that meme video, right? Have you seen that one? इस सज्जन को क्या तकलीफ है? क्या तकलीफ है इनको? Do that with each other in a quiet space, instead of blaming and punishing each other and keeping scorecards. Help each other out. Isn't that what it's supposed to be about? Help each other out. ठीक है यार. Someone's going to make a mistake every now and then in all relationships. There's no such thing as a bulletproof relationship. Yeah. There's only something called bulletproof coffee, which I once had, and I don't even know what the hell that is. All right. So help each other out. Talk to each other. Talk with respect. Talk with patience. And talk with concern. Because talk to educate someone that this is what I need, and are you able to give it to me? I really need it badly. I need you to respect me, or I need you to occasionally physically, show me warmth. And this is a real need for me. So you can't be dismissive. Kuch nahi, tumhara need kuch nahi hai. We buy you all expensive things in this house. You're well taken care of. Last year I took you to Bali. कुछ टच वच नहीं होगा अभी बहुत हो गया चलो सो जाओ. You cannot, or what is now being dubbed as what I call toxic positivity, forcing people to, every time they come and talk about their feelings, you say, no, what is this? You're all too emotional. Think too much. Overthinking. Be positive in life. Okay. If you feel the positivity within, everything will become positive. That's bullshit. Yeah. Really listen to a person. Okay. Don't just juxtapose your, gyan on that person. Really listen to their pain. Really listen to their bewilderment. Really listen to their agony. And if you can't help, find someone who can. Come to a counselor like me, or find a relative who's willing to mediate, or a friend who will knock sense into the situation, really. But I always say this to couples. I say, do you want to compete with each other and beat each other down, or help each other and work as a team? Because believe me, the world will beat you down regardless of how happy you all are together. Old age is going to come. Health problems are going to come. Money is going to leak. You're going to hemorrhage funds suddenly in your late 50s. Suddenly, everyone's got diabetes, someone's got a cardiac issue, obesity, blood sugar. All this is the circle of life. Yeah, all celebrities who are like super fitness freaks also go through it. So work as a team, and if that means showing physical affection through touch. See, touching is also like shorthand. A simple hug can do the job of maybe 1,000 different words about affection and care and concern. You understand what I'm saying? So use the shorthand. It's a beautiful, elegant, universal shorthand, the shorthand of touch, which all species share. All right. And don't get burdened by the cultural values. See, a cultural value is like a compass. It shows you the north, the east, the south, the west, but you get to decide which direction you want to take. So if you feel like you want to be hugged more, you make friends who are huggers, you join some kind of movement where, it's all right to physically touch. A lot of, there was also, I remember this to be this poster near my office, Amma is here. And this Amma was apparently some lady in the South. All she did was hug people, and everybody felt like they've been touched and healed. And it's a very, actually, I mean, some people may say she's a con artist. All right. I don't know her personally, so I can't comment. But I think it's a really sweet thing, for her to just, this big lady, maternal with her white sari, giving people hugs, and then, sort of absorbing some of that pain. I think there's something very beautiful in that.
So to sort of come to the end of things, what do you think the pandemic has done to us as a society in terms of altering our understanding or the value or emphasis we place on touch?
Well, we've realized the value of it, I think, to the extent that, you realize that in the absence of a handshake or a hug, that you do feel a bit deprived. You do feel you feel like you've been put in an ice box to cool, and you need a little bit of warmth and sun. And I think this is almost a universal need. Of course, some people, as I said, if they have a history of being sexually abused, or they've just grown up in a family where physical touch isn't really a thing, they may not feel that requirement as much. They may feel like, yeah, whatever, so what? And it really depends on who you are. But for me personally, I think there's something really wonderful about a hug, about holding hands, about physical touch and embrace, non-sexual or sexual if you have access to that, whichever one really. I think there's something really beautiful and something very pure about that need, and that need being addressed. And I think this pandemic has, with social distancing, etc., with our constant sanitizing of hands, has shown us that, as a society, despite where we come from, where we live, the size of our apartments, the countries we live in, we all have that need. I mean, if there's one thing we share as human beings, it's the need to be cared for, looked at, and by extension, maybe touched as well. Because as I said, the touch is shorthand to convey care, affection, camaraderie, warmth, right? And we all have a need for that, because we all, as human beings, have an innate need to be looked at, acknowledged, taken care of. You know, that's how I see it.
And the last aspect I wanted to touch on was the idea of masturbation, because like typically, especially for women, when you are consciously shamed by the idea of thinking of touching yourself or pleasing yourself or doing something for your own personal pleasure, it changes how you perceive touch generally. Also, small little things, like you said, affect how you start looking at it individually and depending on your personality and circumstances. So, how do you, navigate with something like masturbation in such a situation then?
Well, it's a perfectly normal, natural thing to do, to pleasure yourself. I mean, it doesn't lead to any health problems, from what I've heard, unless you're obviously doing it in an unnatural way, inserting an object that may be, not sanitized, or that could lead to an infection, etc. But I think for a woman or a man, how often you masturbate, where you, or where you choose to masturbate, obviously in privacy, I think it's a very private affair. I think that kind of scrutiny is really unnecessary and unwarranted, and it's not something you have to discuss with people openly. It's like whether you wash your face with your left hand or your right hand. That's not something you discuss. Similarly, your masturbation habits are proportionate to your sexual appetite, and everyone has a different sexual appetite. Sometimes a man may you want it more often, a wife may, or a partner may not want it as often, or she enjoys it whenever she gets it, but it's not like something that she's thinking about on a daily basis. So your sexual needs, your sexual drive, your sexual appetite is all a function of your individual requirements. And it's also hormone based, isn't it? So sometimes it's not just your needs, it's not just something in your head, it's hormone based as well. So yeah, by all means, please masturbate in a safe, hygienic, and private environment. There's no one looking and there's no one judging, as long as you don't make a big hue and cry about it and advertise it and start tweeting about the fact that I'm a liberated woman because I masturbate. Because see, the moment you invite scrutiny, the moment you put your views out there, technically you will invite scrutiny. You will get someone who tries to troll you or teach you a lesson or tries to turn you or tries to sort of give you a sermon about what a what a rightful or morally uh, elevated position is for you to take as a woman. So people will have opinions on everything. I was just talking to my Uber driver a couple of days ago, and he was telling me that he's very worried about how people see him. I said, buddy, if you take a chair and sit in the corner of a road, in a corner of a road, people will still have an opinion on that. Somebody will say, why you took my chair? I need this chair. Someone old person will say that, oh, I need to sit. You should not be sitting. I'm old. Some woman will say, this chair is reserved for women only. Why are you sitting? Someone will say, look, we are stressed out. We're going to the station. It's going to be crowded. And this asshole is sitting on a chair in the middle of nowhere, enjoying life. So people are going to have opinions about a man on a chair also. And that's like the most idle you can ever be. Sit on a chair in one corner of the street. Or someone may come and try to sell you something, saying, can I sell you fruits? You look like you're sitting now, might as well eat something. Someone will say, why are you sitting? You should get up and do stretches, otherwise your back will get stiff. Someone will say, why are you sitting? Let's go somewhere. I know where there are two empty beds, two ek bed pe late, main ek bed pe late now, and let's relax. Life's too hard. People are going to have 101 things to say about you, even if you're sitting on a chair. So why get enamored or why get encumbered by all that or burdened by that? To hell with it. You want to masturbate, masturbate. just keep it safe, and obviously don't masturbate when you're supposed to be in your office, when you're supposed to be, carrying out certain responsibilities for the house and family, because then that's a problem. Then that's anything can be addictive. My dad used to say anything can become an addiction. He said if you drink too much water, your bladder will blast as well. People say drink more water. You drink 12, 15 liters in one go, you will lead to a hospital emergency. So yeah, you want to masturbate, do it, at a time where you don't have anything else to do at that time. You're going to maybe sleep or take a nap. It's all right. It's fine. And of course, a woman should pleasure herself. Yeah. Why shouldn't she? I think men and women both have a right to pleasure themselves and touch themselves and feel sexual and feel sensual. Even if they don't have a partner available, why not? Nothing wrong in it, in my opinion.
Yes, and to conclude everything, what do you think would lead to sort of destigmatize talking about anything? Both sexual and non-sexual touch are not very easily spoken about in our societies usually. So,
Hmm.
what would maybe like, how can we communicate better about something which is slightly sensitive like this in our society?
I think when we talk of society, Simran, essentially we're talking about human beings. What is society but a group of human beings? So the work begins at the individual level. So firstly, as a human being, stop stigmatizing things. Start questioning all the rules um, that you are so attached to. So what I tell people, I'm like, so there's this dialogue from the movie The Dark Knight. Okay, it's said by the Joker. He says, "You have all these rules, and you think they're going to save you." All right, of course, he says it in a slightly more ominous context, but I really like that dialogue. Like, you have all these rules, and you think they're going to save you. He laughs at them, like, "Why do you have so many rules?" So fast, start questioning your rules. Why are you making up these arbitrary rules about whether masturbation is bad or good, or whether hugging is being clingy or needy? It is what it is. Let it be what it is. If you have a need to be hugged, that stands true. If you don't want to be touched, that also stands true. You have to ask yourself questions about why you believe what you believe or why you want what you want. And that's when things will get destigmatized. And like, what are we doing? We're just having a conversation. I've never seen you before in my life. You haven't seen me. What are we doing right now? This is what people need to do. Talk about this shit. All right. Don't just talk about what's new on Netflix. Queen's Gambit kitna acha hai. Great. It's a good show. You can discuss whatever you want. I'm sure there's a WhatsApp group for everything on all our phones, right? From where to order eggs from to where to talk about movies and food and trip plans and building groups and cousins groups and family groups and photo sharing groups. We all have it. We have access to other people, but we need to also control the tempo, the tone of the conversations we have with those people. Sometimes we may not be in a position to lay out what those conversations should be, but then second level of censorship, do you want to be a part of every conversation that exists? Because there's a limited number of hours in the day. So if you want to initiate a conversation on something a little deeper about the idea of hugging, touching, what does intimacy mean to you? Some people say, अरे ये वो have fun हो गया यार, ये सब कुछ समझ में नहीं आ रहा है, अरे ये psychology हमसे नहीं होता. ठीक है, that's fine. See, because like Maslow, right? Everyone's at a different level of needs. Some people just don't feel the need for it. Maybe in their 40s and 50s, they'll feel the need. That's okay. We all evolve at different speeds. So the idea is keep the channels of conversation open. Do not stigmatize staff. Question all these rules that you have sort of put into order. And most importantly, be accepting, be less rigid, be a little patient with each other, and hug it out. All right. If you feel you want to, go ahead, do it. No one's stopping you.